Hello, and welcome to another episode of Goalie Interference. Mike has the
Hi.
jazz hands. Look at those
Hi.
jazz hands with the
Yeah.
they're not that big today. You're not leaning that far into the camera today. Oh boy, now we're in trouble. Oh boy. All right. Well, we have plenty to talk about today. We got all sorts of different things to talk about. The Golden Knights lost for the first time in 24 days. Boy, that had been a while, which was awfully nice. It did feel like quite a while that they had not lost, which was good. But, you know, they do it to a team that they absolutely should beat. They did not play a particularly good game. They gave the game away late with a late penalty and then not being able to kill it and then not being able to score in overtime and then not being able to score in shootout. So definitely opportunities to take that game. I think it's a point that, like, you'll take your one, you look at it, you look at the standings, you feel pretty good with the one until you start looking at the rest of the schedule. And we'll get into that first, but let's just start with kind of the general feeling that I think a lot of people had last night, which is that they're playing down to their competition, that when they play bad teams, they play down to their competition. I'm not sure I fully agree with it. I want to see where you land on that. Do you think this team plays down to the team they're playing and in turn up to the teams they're playing?
Why are you burying the lead, Ken? There was a trade today. God damn it.
Oh, God. We'll get to that at some point because the trade was useless for the next 5 months, 6 months.
I know. The trade was actually pretty smart. I don't think that they necessarily play down to their opponents on a regular basis. I mean, I've seen teams that actually do it more than others. There was a time where the St. Louis Blues, the other team that I watch pretty often, not this year, but last year, when they were still a playoff team, man, they were getting run over by bad teams left and right. And it was so strange, but you could just tell that that team thrived on emotion a lot and couldn't get it going in those games. Now, watching the Golden Knights last night, to me, I didn't think that it was like purely of them not being able to get revved up. I think they're a pretty consistent team in their effort for the most part, especially under Cassidy.
Usually, yeah.
Usually, I think they really are, because I think that the structure that he has instilled in them lends itself to more consistent play. Like, it doesn't have to be balls to the wall all the time to get results. It's just when you look at it, it's like, man, you had 2 days off. You just beat Tampa. Like, come on, guys. And I think that that's really what it's going to be in the locker room more than anything is just, come on, guys. Like, we know we're better than that. We just didn't have our best tonight, but this can't happen again. And now we got Calgary. So
one game trip too. I think that was a pain. Like, that's just really stupid. That's brutal scheduling to go there for one game. It's a terrible team. Like, you're on a win streak. It was set up for them to struggle. I guess in that respect, I'm happy they at least got one.
Yeah, but tell me how Nick Waugh didn't score 8 goals in the game because he's so used to flying from Vegas to Chicago and back as a member of the Chicago Wolves 3 years ago. It's bullshit that Waugh didn't score 6 goals. He should have been built for that game, Ken. He should have ran the show. No, he actually, I thought his line was great. Like, you give me that line whenever you need. They've been fine. When Waugh's been a centerman on the fourth, I'm good with it. I think Howden's been really good there too. But yeah, I think this was an off game. I don't think it's a consistent problem for the Golden Knights. And like you say, like, this was really, especially coming out of this All-Star break, it's a pretty damn good run, man. Like, I know it's a bit of a close call against San Jose.
You'll take your six game point streak, 5 wins. Yeah.
It's the NHL.
The Anaheim game wasn't great. Yeah, Anaheim game wasn't particularly great. There's an argument to be made that some portions of the Tampa game weren't particularly good. I watched the first period again, and I do kind of see the side that John Cooper was going, which is like, I don't understand how we were down 2 at the end of that period. I kind of do agree. 2 slipped through. 1 was a high stick. So they get 4 goals, and 2 of them I thought Vasilevsky probably should save, and the other one's a high stick. Should not have been a goal.
Did you think it was a high stick too?
It was
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't.
I was told by one of the stats guys that they had actually deleted the goal off of the sheet because they saw the same replays we did. And they were in the process of like, okay, well, this is going back. Let's get ahead of this. They deleted it off. And then there was a shot that they had not seen yet that came up on their screens because they have all the different feeds. And they were like, oh, this is going to be close. Put it back on. So there was a shot that we did not see. I don't know what's going on with the replays. Like, I still, like, can we get a clock on the goddamn screen, please? There was a goal at the very last second of the game, and we cannot get a clock on the screen. Like, I don't understand how we're not set up for that to be the case at all times. Whatever, but that game,
I thought it was a high stick, but it was honestly though, it was a pretty like low event hockey game in a lot of ways.
The second 2 periods, I mean, the first period was high pace back and forth. I think Golden Knights ended up getting the better of it. I don't think that they should have been up 2. I take it where you get it. And so where I think is interesting is the second period they were bad, and then the third period they were terrific. So it's hard to kind of judge what that game really was.
Yeah, and you're facing a team that can do that. I mean, which of the goals on Vasilevsky didn't you like, out of curiosity?
The one slipped through on Theodore. He came he's probably it's a shot. It's in close. It's always tough, but like Vasi saves those most of the time.
Okay.
And there was another one that slipped through him, and I can't remember which one it was.
So the Theodore one, I agree with. That was a straight. It just barely got across the line. There's a pretty nice play though across the board.
Oh yeah, no, it was a good play for sure. But like he saves that most of the time.
Yeah, how about the save that he had on Waugh late in the game?
Yeah, he was spectacular in the third period. Yeah, he was ridiculous in the third period.
What I did like that the Golden Knights did though, I mean, the first period was a little bit looser than I would have liked, but like
erratic.
I did think for the most part they kept Tampa off the rush pretty well. And Hill made one really big save on Cirelli at the end of the first. That 2-on-1 save at the end of the first was a really big save, a really good save on Cirelli. And I thought Cirelli was probably one of the best players for Tampa.
He was fantastic. He's so
which is good. And like, listen, dude, when we got him in Syracuse, so we were in the midst of here comes story time with Mike, and I know that people just love this, but as my dog comes tearing down the stairs, which you may or may not hear. Oh, there he is. Hi, Tucker. So we get Cirelli hot out of junior in Syracuse, and he gets there for a playoff run, like a round into it. And we're looking at this little scrawny kid, and we're kind of like, yeah, this guy's not going to make the lineup. And they chucked him right in. Like, and it was kind of, 100%, because he was coming out with some juice, right? He'd had a pretty long run in major junior, but you're kind of inside though. You're thinking like, this guy hasn't been here with us all year, man. What's this kid going to do? So I think we were all kind of like bitter about that, but now looking back on it, we can see what Steve Yzerman and Julian Breezeball were looking at, because he's such a great two-way player. And the funny part is Brett Howden was on that team too, and Howden got there earlier, but Cirelli like pushed him aside, so
different, and that's not to say now that we see it. Yeah.
And that's not, dude, they're both carving out good NHL careers but Cirelli, man, he's good. So in any case, it was a game that was punctuated by the goals that occurred, but it was probably a little bit tighter than I think people would think when you see a 5-4 game, right? You think it's wide open up and down. It's like, there's an empty netter. One gets chucked in at the end. And so, by the way, I loved how Waugh buried that thing, the empty netter.
Yeah, it was from distance too. Yeah.
Well, and I think he was I think Waugh was making up a little bit for earlier in the game with just a brutal play up the middle that had been picked off for Perry's goal. Like that was just a terrible Nick Waugh pass by Waugh. So, he's played with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I don't know. It's one of the first games I've seen in a while, Ken, where I looked and I said, "Man, Marshy was great." And I
against Tampa.
Always, like you put him against Tampa or against Florida, like he, how Marshy is, dude. You put a chip on his shoulder and you let that dog run. And I love watching him play those games. And I thought that they matched up pretty well against even Tampa's top lines. Like you didn't see Braden Point run wild, like Braden Point actually,
but yeah.
He did have one break that he got in tight that they managed to kind of snuff him out. I think that was towards the second as I'm looking to my notes, maybe.
It was.
15 seconds. Yeah, maybe it was later in there. But, like it just – they caught Point sleeping big time on Howden's goal. Like Sergachev was a bad pinch. And, dude, how about that for a response, though? You got to like that. Like,
you win the draw, you dump it in, and you got a guy going to the net. Like that's just and again, like that's the other one I was thinking of. That's not necessarily Vasilevsky. the puck gets kicked into their own goal. Like, yeah, Howden's there.
Yeah.
If the pass is there, maybe it does end up going in. But like, all right, so take that game. I think it's fair to say, all right, they definitely went toe-to-toe with Tampa. They were certainly not outplayed. They were certainly not the worst of the two teams in that game. That game ends up going down as a win. I think you look at the San Jose game, I don't necessarily think they were the better team in that game. Yes, they get across the line towards the end with the goals. San Jose just decided in the third period, let's do the exact thing you're not supposed to do against Vegas. We haven't been doing it for 40 minutes. Let's do it now. Don't understand what happened there. I don't think they played a great game there, and they win. I don't know that they played all that well against Anaheim on Super Bowl Sunday, and they win. I thought they played pretty well in New Jersey, pretty well in New York, and didn't win those games. And then there's last night where they lose, but they get a point out of it. They did not play well last night. They did not deserve to win that game at all. And so, like, you look at the process compared to the results, and it actually matches up with some of the games prior to the break. Not to me as much 5-game win streak and then a loss on the road after the break. I do think that they were better than Minnesota. They were better than Nashville. But the other ones have been kind of hit or miss. I'm not feeling as confident as I would like to on a 6-game point streak with 5 wins in there, knowing what's coming up here, which is just an absolute gauntlet starting tomorrow, which fortunately for the 97th time, they get another team coming in off a back-to-back, which is, again, very helpful. But beyond that, like, that's the easiest game, Calgary.
Yeah, it was. But you know what? I do disagree with the San Jose game, but I thought they just kind of bookended it a little bit. I thought the second period wasn't good enough, straight up. Like, and they just like
which is a problem
there a bit. And yeah,
which has been a problem all year. Yeah, Tampa, same thing.
If you have to diagnose the Vegas problems, it's slow starts or not scoring first, and it's second periods, really.
Yeah.
Or 2 of your critical areas. And that's not talking about power. Yeah. But like the 2 things just in terms of gameplay themselves that have bothered them are 2 of them. But I actually thought Kapanen was really good.
Yeah, he was very good. I don't think it's necessarily slow starts. I think it's just not finishing early enough.
Lack of finish.
Yeah.
I'll give that to you too.
Because I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair to say that it's a slow start because that indicates that like they're not ready to play or something like that. They get these chances. They're there to get the chances. They just haven't been finishing them. And then recently, especially on the win streaks, they do. Like they've only trailed for 12 minutes in the last 6 games.
That's a fair assessment, Ken. I think that you worded that better than I did coming out. But I think, sometimes this is where, like when they were on that big slide before, really in January and kind of leading into even the All-Star break, they were in a funk, dude, where just nothing's going on right. And especially you're still trying to kind of find your way. You don't know if Stone's coming back. He's been out of the lineup. Cassidy's playing bingo with the blinds. You know what I mean? They've actually found some chemistry that seems to be working, at least with the lines. The stability, I think, has been – here's what can happen in these situations where your team, maybe you're not always performing your best, but at least you have enough familiarity and chemistry to kind of grind through things, and I think that's been a little bit indicative of the Golden Knights getting points in all these games and winning games, is that they've not just found ways, but they've been able to lean on each other a little bit in areas. So, I'm cautiously optimistic here, Ken, is what I want to say. Okay. I see signs from this team that, hey, they're pretty damn good structurally. When they want to play, when they want to play, they can be pretty good. I still think that this personnel is it's very yin and yang, right? Like it's very high and low. Like the personnel to me is still, it's not the same as when you watch Boston or Carolina straight up, right.
Tampa.
And we don't have a big reference point out in the West. Like in the West, you don't get to see these teams very often that just night in and night out kick ass. And I'm telling, you guys know I watch every team. And Boston and Carolina kick ass every night. And the Rangers are right. And the Rangers are right there now too.
Yep.
And Jersey ain't far off, which is scary. And you look out west and it's like Colorado sometimes. Dallas is probably the most consistent team. But I think for Vegas, and they have. So I think for Vegas, it's going to be – they're going to have – straight up, if they're going to do damage, they got to find another gear. Like there's no other way. And I'm just not sure if that's going to get there with this lineup.
Well, like recently, obviously the lines being more consistent, they're getting scoring across the board. I always go back to kind of the same concept when that comes up. When we start to see these little stretches where they do get scoring down the lineup, I always ask the question, who are they playing? Because I think a lot of the times when you have depth, when you're trying to put a depth lineup out, it does matter. Are you playing against another depth lineup that can actually compete with you? The Tampa game, good job. They competed. They kept up. That's a team that has that type of lineup. They were good. However, Perry scored twice, right? Or Perry scored once, and the other one was the turnover, and then he put the ball there.
It was why he scored from the slot, and then he had the other one from the angle.
Well, then the other one was
Nemestikov,
right?
Theodore.
Yeah. So
right. Yeah.
That's 2 goals from their depth that I think all of a sudden we've got a different game. You know, you look at, I don't think there's much depth in Minnesota right now. I don't think there's much depth in Nashville right now. Obviously, Chicago, San Jose, and Anaheim don't have any. So, yes, I think that we're seeing more of it at the moment, but I still wonder, are we going to get the consistent goal scoring against the better teams? And that's the question that I think we're going to get answered over the course of the next 10 games here. Because the next 10 games are relentless. There's literally one game that you can kind of take your foot off the gas pedal. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the first game home off of a little break, right? The one in Montreal against Montreal. Or no, it's the end of a homestand, last one before they go on the road. Should be able to get that one. But the other ones are difficult. You're playing teams with depth. Even Calgary, who's not playing all that well right now, has depth. Dallas has depth. Colorado, not as much because they've been banged up. So maybe that's a better spot to catch them. Carolina, New Jersey, Florida, Tampa, Carolina. Like, these teams all have depth. This is where we're going to see 2 things. 1, if this third and fourth line can hold up. And 2, how long Cassidy actually will stick with this. Because so far it's basically been solely based on winning. We're winning. We don't have another option. We haven't had a player go in or out of the lineup. We're going to stick with this. If they stop winning, which I think is going to happen, they should win some of these games, but they're not going on a 5 or 6 game win streak from here, I don't think. So as they lose a couple of these and as they have poor periods, do we see him make that move? And then how much of this is like the perfect puzzle piece fitting right now? Because at the moment, it kind of looks like that. All 4 lines seem to have a pretty good fit. He's probably going to switch it at some point, though. And I think the front office is going to make him switch it, too.
Well, that's what I remain curious to see, because you talk about having $9.5 million or more worth of cap space to play around with the trade deadline for the Vegas Golden Knights. I'll be a monkey's uncle if they aren't going to use every cent of that thing somehow here, Kenny.
Does not seem like a very good idea, considering they're down to 5 picks.
They're sitting first in the Pacific. They're thinking we can win this thing.
Yeah.
We've been through this endlessly. They're going to use that cap space because it's going to be 1 or 2 players. And honestly, I don't even, at this stage of the game, I don't care who it is. I don't care. I just know that right now, at least, I believe that this lineup is at least at a stage, like I say, where they're grinding out wins and they're pretty consistent and they know one another. You're going to have to find the right piece to fit this lineup. And I'm starting to think, Ken, I'm not sure exactly where that fits up front. Like, is it still just a right winger away? Who do we push out? Okay, to me, the piece that pushes out is Amadio. He's the one player I look at that I think out of this lineup. And we're not talking about the quality of the player. We're talking about the quality of the player for where he slots in the lineup, right? Like, Amadio, is he a better hockey player than Howden or Colasar? You know, he might put up more points than them, but he doesn't fit the same role as those guys.
Right.
And that's kind of what's plagues a guy like Amadio your whole career, is that you just fight and fight and fight to make it to the NHL. And it's just, you just can't get over that hump of being a top 6 guy, you know? And a third line guy is where you're vulnerable. Kesselman coming out, you know,
Well, he's been pretty good recently.
And I think so.
Yeah.
So if it's truly like Amadio you're looking to replace, what are your great options? But does it even matter? Are they not going to replace him and just go with the big again?
Probably what's going to happen, yeah. You're going to plug all that money in there. You're going to plug somebody else in there, yeah.
I don't think it'll be Timo Meyer. I know that
I
there's
don't
been
either.
a thought process that he could possibly move on them. I don't think Meyer's the guy that fits there. Patrick Kane, boy, doesn't that just it just has all along felt like exactly the move they would make.
Yep.
That
Yep.
this is like when the Golden Knights lost in playoffs 2 years ago. I had somebody ask me, what do they do now? And it was they needed to improve the power play and they needed a number one center. They didn't have a true center. They needed a center. I said, well, that's easy. They're going to go. I said a couple of other things, but they're going to go get Jack Eichel. And the person I was talking was like, how? I go, it doesn't matter. They're going to get him. He's the guy who's available. They're going to make it happen. And that's where like Kane has been on fire the last couple. We saw it. I mean, Jesus, look at the game he had against Toronto. Look at how hard he was trying against Vegas.
Like I think Vegas wins the game because of Pat Kane.
He's playing his ass.
They're winning because of Pat Kane. He gave them the first goal, and then he tried to give him a second one, and Smith missed it.
But he's also still scoring. Like this is what you face with him.
He didn't score. He missed 3 chances.
Did you see what he did against Toronto?
I did see what he did against Toronto.
Holy Hanzus. But in any case,
I don't think he can do it every night. And I also think he turns the puck over way too often to play for Cassidy.
Now, that's exactly the direction I was going. To me, Matt, if you're Bill Foley, you're going, this is our guy. And if you're Bruce Cassidy, you're going, I really don't think this is probably the guy. Like, a guy that really would have played well if he was a center. The problem is he's a center, but like Horvat would have been a great addition for a winger for this team if he could have pulled a rental off. But I'm really not sure. Like
the rental thing is like, I don't like the rental idea because
I don't either.
You're just asking yourself to have one more injury, and you don't have a way to win the Stanley Cup if you have one more injury. Like that's
and here's
the problem with the rental.
And that's the hard part is that Mark Stone's LTIR is not in perpetuity.
It is for this season.
Correct. But, listen to some,
in theory.
Like, I'll give you a great example of it. If people want to know how to build a team to last for years and years and be strong, a team that may never get over the hump, but damn it, they're right there is Carolina. And I keep mentioning them a lot. But the whole reason for it is that they do have something of a renegade owner who is very involved in everything, but the guy is put everything into it. Like Tom Dundon, he just did an interview with Frank Cervalli, my coworker at Daily Faceoff, that's on his podcast. Frankly speaking, this is an unpaid plug here because I think it's such a good interview. But Dundon was just adamant that they would not in the past several years add something short-term that was going to hurt that team long-term, because to him, there's no such thing as a window. You should be able to compete at all times if you're smart about it. And I think Vegas is operating under that same mentality that there is no window. You should always be able to compete. The difference is that when you look at the stockpile of the Hurricanes, they still have some picks. They still have prospects. They've still drafted well. They've signed good free agents. Like,
prospects are making an impact. That's the biggest part.
They've done things
mattering at the NHL level. The Golden Knights don't have that outside of Cotter.
Yes. And credit to Cotter, dude. I at the start of the year, I thought, okay, he'll be up for a while. And he made the team because there was a hole.
For sure.
He is an NHL player now. He's made it. I like him.
I don't know that you want Paul Cotter on your first line in a playoff series against McDavid. I'm not sure about that.
You want Paul Cotter playing third line on a really good
team
is what
and,
you want.
And you don't have that other player, and that's where, okay, well, now you're saying that, pull up the Patrick Kane. The problem is I don't want Patrick Kane playing first line.
Right.
Like that's where, like, is it JVR? That's the other name that keeps coming up that seems to kind of fit a little bit. He's, a little more of a guy that plays in front of the goal. But to me, like, I don't think he would make a huge difference. Like, if you're going to do it, it's got to be somebody who's going to make a difference. And I don't know that that's going to be the case. So I just don't see a good fit. Like, personally, we'll see. They're going to do something. They're going to use the money up, clearly.
Well,
I don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If they could grab Meyer and extend him, I'd love that because he'd fill the right side, but they can't afford to do it.
They can't. You can't.
Right?
Like, how many times do we
That's
have
what I
to
mean.
play this game? Like, if they do that, 2 misfits are gone for nothing. 2,
Right.
not 1, 2.
And at some point, one of them will be, but they still have contracts that are extenuating. So,
But again, the problem is you're wasting assets if they play that game. Like we just saw it today. They wasted an asset. They made a move where they gave up Nick Holden and a 3rd round pick to buy a player. They then gave up that player to get a contract they didn't want and a pick that they had to give up. And now they gave up that player for another pick. Like, it's all been downhill. And they've done this with so many different players. If they buy Timo Meier, they're going to pay 3 first-round picks to get him. And then they're going to give up 2 more players to do it. Yes, they have those players for this season, but like this idea of there is no window, we're always going to compete. Like, boy, that's going to come crashing down in a hurry if they keep playing this way. You have to replenish, and they're not replenishing. You can replenish through a window and extend a window. They're not replenishing. It would look different if Nick Suzuki was here. If they had traded Nick Suzuki instead of Cody Glass, it would look different, but they didn't.
I mean, I'm just trying to think about trade lists here and see. I mean, salary is going to come into play. You can't take somebody on with a bloated salary either, you know, because, like, let's say, I mean, even if they thought Brock Besser would be a good gamble from Vancouver, he's still got term left on his contract.
They can't afford it.
They can't do it. You know, if you're going for your pure rental, let's go down the list here. I mean, is Barbashev going to be the guy? He's not a top 2-line player.
Nope.
Barbashev is a 3rd-line player. He can play 2nd-line minutes, but he has historically been a 3rd-line player.
It's ridiculous to say because Barbashev is probably better than Paul Cotter. Barbashev is probably better than Michael Amadio. But the problem is you don't know the fit. You don't know whether they can fit on that line as well. And they certainly are not going to fit as well on the 3rd line as we've seen Stevenson, Carrier, and Kessel. So by buying Barbashev, you're pushing out a player out of your lineup that's not that much worse, and you're giving up an asset to do it, and you're messing with a lineup that has actually been working. Like, it doesn't make sense to go down that road. The best thing they can do now is do nothing.
Let me toss one name out there just for you to see what you think, because I would be curious about him with Vegas, and maybe he'd fit the mold, and he doesn't have a huge cap hit. What do you think about Max Domi from Chicago?
I do like Max Domi because I think Max Domi could play the Paul Cotter role on that first line. Yeah. I think he also would be interesting to kind of fit in there somewhere else if you do decide you're going to go different routes and maybe he doesn't play with Eichel. Maybe he plays with Marchessault or something like that. I think there is a way. I do like that one. He's got salary on him, doesn't he?
On Domi?
Yeah, or is he unrestricted?
Domi's UFA $3 million.
Okay, all right, then that doesn't. All right, I'm good with that one. But again, where's the pick? So you're giving up your 3rd round pick to get him? Is that enough?
I mean, I'll tell you what. If Barbashev's going to get a 2nd for sure,
then Domi's not getting he's not a 3rd.
Oh, I think he could easily be a 3rd.
Yeah, I think he'd be. I mean, if that case, then you have the extra 3rd.
It's supply and demand, and there's just not that many wingers and forwards out there.
Right, in which case he's probably higher than a 3rd. I think he's probably more like a 2nd, pushing even a 1st.
I mean, that's why Toronto overpaid for O'Reilly, is because they knew if we're going to get this player, we have to do it now.
Yep,
and that's because Horvat's gone, O'Reilly's gone. If you're a team that needs a centerman, Jonathan Taves just left the building too. He's not playing the rest of he's not on the trade block. He may play this year, but he's done.
I don't think people want him anyway, but.
Oh, I know. I'm not meaning it for Vegas, but I'm just saying, like, if there was any inclination that these were your top 3 centermen, I mean, you're looking at like Sam Lafferty, dude.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that's I know that may sound condescending, but Sam's not Ryan O'Reilly, you know?
Right.
So trades can get goofy real fast. And it's funny because we've seen this movement out the front, but like the defense, I'm so sick of Chikrin not being traded. I'm so sick of Gavrikov sitting out. We're on day 12. I just put an article out today at Daily Faceoff about how it just chaps my ass that they got a guy sitting on the sidelines for 12 days. If you put somebody out of the lineup for trade-related reasons, they better be traded in the next day or two. So anyway, that's just a pet peeve of mine. But
let's talk about today's trade. But first, I'll tell you that This episode of Goalie Interference is brought to you by the Jimerson Law Firm. Jimerson Law Firm is one of Las Vegas's preeminent law firms specializing in high-stakes business, civil, and family litigation. When winning matters, even against the Blackhawks, or winning didn't seem to matter, but it should have. Seek out the Jimerson Law Firm. Golden Knights have won 5 out of 6, so there's been a lot of winning. We need more winning. Going to be tough coming up. So the trade today is Shea Weber and a 5th-round pick for Dyson Mayo. Is that who it was? I think you were going to forget his name.
Dyson Mayo. He's got 2 years left of one way on it. Yeah.
So Dyson Mayo, the reason why the Golden Knights got Dyson Mayo is not because they think Dyson Mayo is a good player. It's because Arizona doesn't want to pay an AHL defenseman $2 million over the course of the next 2 years. And despite the crazy cap hits, Dyson Mayo's cap hit is $950,000. Shea Weber's cap hit is $8 million. It's actually more expensive by physical cash to have Dyson Mayo on your roster than it is Shea Weber. So it's trust me, I've done this before, and Daniil Miromanov has clapped back at me and yelled at me, and he proved me wrong. Okay, if this is the next Daniil Miromanov, so be it. But Dyson Mayo is not in the Golden Knights' plans to play in the NHL this year, next year, or the following year. He's simply a body that they have to pay for that was an ability to get Shea Weber off of their salary cap now and for a decent price of just a 5th-round pick. The problem that the part that people don't fully understand or grasp is that this deal has zero to do with this season. None, zilch, nothing at all, period. So if you think this is going to do, no, stop. It has nothing to do with this season. He had $8 million on LTIR. They had 20x million, whatever it happens to be. Doesn't matter. They all of a sudden don't have that $8 million. They're still above the number 0. Doesn't make a difference. Mark Stone's out for the season. Makes absolutely no difference. I also don't buy, and I see where people are coming from this, but I don't buy that this helps them get a player with term either. It does not make sense to me. And here's why it doesn't make sense. By rule, yes, it does allow them to go more over the salary cap. Because if they had Shea Weber in the offseason, you can only go X amount over the cap. That X amount is 10%. Otherwise, you have to go into LTIR, force yourself in LTIR, begin the season. Not ideal. You could go further over. The problem is, if the Golden Knights' plan is to go more than 10% over the salary cap, what are we doing? Like, what is going on here? It makes absolutely no sense to me. The biggest thing that comes out of this trade to me is it signals one thing, and that is Mark Stone and Robin Lehner are expected to begin the season next year healthy. They are not planning on beginning next season in LTIR. That, I think, is significant in that we have had some question marks on that. That's the only thing I think this trade signifies. Is it a good move? It's fine. But is it some slam dunk? No. They again gave up an asset for someone else to take away an asset.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas basically just gets some cap flexibility for the summer. That's really what it comes down to.
And they paid a 5th-round pick to do it and $2 million of Foley's money.
And if they want to go get a player at this deadline and re-sign him, maybe it helps them a little bit. So
something just popped into my head. I have a question for you.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
So recently in the past couple of episodes, we've talked about the importance of home playoff games, right? We got to have home playoff games. And reasonably, we believe they make somewhere in the ballpark of $1 million, right? Each home playoff game. I believe I've seen that number.
You would know better than I. You say $1 million?
It's somewhere in the ballpark of $1 million per game.
I thought it was I thought it was north of that, but I don't know an exact number, so I don't want to have any direct quote on what that might be. But it's
either way, it's not 17 million or some shit. Like it's not that far up.
it's not the NFL here, folks.
my point is this.
But it matters.
My question to you is this: if it is about making that money, and it is about making sure we have these home playoff games, shouldn't the same be there when you're taking on $2 million for a player that's not going to play for you? Like, where's that money? Doesn't that money exist? Like, hey,
because the thought is you can make your team better and make more money down the road anyway and recoup it, right? There's these whole parallel universes.
That's the same argument about not making the playoffs. Same argument can be made.
But that's going to look at you and be like, that's whataboutism. This is about us getting better on the ice so we can do better down the road. And this is this side and this side. And And here,
Didn't
I'm
get
not
better on the
disagreeing
ice
with
today.
this.
You didn't get better on the ice today.
Yep. I know.
You're probably not going to get better on the ice down the road, because if the argument is we needed to get rid of that salary so that we can then replace that salary, which didn't even count against the cap, it only counts against off season. They're signaling we're going to go $7 million above the cap into next summer and sell off more assets for absolutely nothing. I just don't understand how we keep going down this path over and over and over again. And then it really chaps my fanny when I see excitement about how great of a deal this is for Vegas. Who got them in this situation?
I don't think
This
it's a
front
great
office.
Deal.
It's a
I don't think
terrible
it's a
deal.
great deal.
It's better than the situation could have been. It could have been worse. They could have had John Moore and a second-round pick gone for Evgeny Dodonov. Shout out to Evgeny Dodonov, the best GM the Golden Knights have had in the last 3 years. He made the best move, stopping that deal. That's the best thing they've done.
He's having a terrible year too. Poor guy.
He is having a terrible year. But that deal was horrible. So now you compare it to, okay, now they've only given up a 5th-round pick and they take on $2 million. Yeah, that's way better than the deal they were doing before. But this front office is the reason why they're in cap hell, why they keep having to do this. And meanwhile, we just had a 15-minute conversation about how they're going to go further into cap hell.
I know. I mean, realistically, for this deadline, what do they really have to move, Ken? Really, what are they going to give up? Are they going to move a first-round pick?
They have first-round picks, Brisson and Dean, Cormier, Korczak.
And they have 2 third-rounders this year. So
they can move a third. They can move a third in the future, a second in the future. Okay.
But this year's draft is hysterical.
It's good, right?
First, 2 thirds, no 4th, no 5th, a 6th and a 7th.
Yeah.
In a really deep draft,
right.
Look at St. Louis. St. Louis has 3 first-round picks because Armstrong was smart to get rid of the players he could. I wouldn't be shocked if St. Louis landed Meyer or Chychrun with 2 of those first-rounders. Wouldn't be shocked. They've got so much capital in that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Real interesting is if they wait. If they wait for Meyer to go somewhere else and then buy him in the offseason off of someone who basically rented him, that would be real interesting if they could pull that off. Vegas would be a candidate to do that.
Yeah. So I mean, if it gives Vegas some more cap flexibility in the summer, I get it. I don't know. I really wouldn't be giving up draft picks. That's my thing. It just, no matter what, makes me nervous. Even 5th rounders.
I get why they did it. I understand.
But the thing is, they are in bad cap space, so it's tough.
It's not for what it was, for being able to get rid of that contract. I think it's worth the 5th-round pick. You have to remember how they got that contract in the first place, which was making a terrible trade, compiling it with a second terrible trade that you didn't have the salary cap space to have, forcing yourself to make a 3rd terrible trade, and now you're making this one that actually doesn't look so terrible all of a sudden because we've had such terrible trades in the past. Nonetheless, what it signals, what it says could be coming around the corner is what scares me. It's we're planning on going way over the cap again. I don't understand when, that has to stop at some point. And then again, I don't know how you even sell this to Bill Foley, which is yeah, we're going to bring on this player that you have to pay $2 million for, and then we're going to give up a 5th-round pick, and you get nothing. What's the sales pitch there?
I'm not even sure. What do you think? I
don't know. I'm assuming we're going to do this next. We're going to improve the team with X, Y, and Z over the course of the offseason. I think they must be looking at the future, and I would imagine that's probably what's going on. I wonder, though, and I'll put up this little chart that I made today. The schedule is not easy from here on out. And you look at these numbers. So the Golden Knights' points percentage against of teams that they're playing the rest of the season is .571. That's effectively a 94-point team. That's on average. So every single team that comes in the next 25 games is on average a 94-point team. That's a pretty good team. That's just missing the playoffs. Pretty darn good team. They play 15 playoff teams and just 6 bottom 10 teams the rest of the way. Compare that to probably the only team that could potentially knock the Golden Knights out of the playoffs. They're 9 points back. That's going to be 7 in a few minutes. Oh, no, it's not. They tied it. Arizona tied it. So maybe it will still be 9. Is Calgary. Their schedule is much easier at 522. 13 playoff teams, 10 bottom 10 teams. Like, we have to be careful understanding that most teams play similar schedules over the course of the season. That's just kind of the way the NHL works. The Golden Knights have gotten their easiest portion of their schedule out of the way. They have the hardest to come. And it's in the most important games is when these games get even more difficult. They have to be careful to not over-exaggerate where they stand in the standings at the moment because of what they've played and what they've done recently.
Yeah. And it's not any different than like Calgary's got a pretty easy schedule, but you also look at Calgary and it's like that team just can't get it going.
They're not winning. Right.
But Vegas keeps managing to win. And
through the easiest part of the hard part of the schedule. Right. They've had 3 games against 3 of the worst teams in the league.
And we've made it 41 minutes without talking goaltending, but you're going to need your ace goaltender against some of these teams down the stretch. I think.
Who's the ace goaltender?
Well, I know you and I think we disagree. They're going to need Thompson back in the lineup, if you ask me. And I'm not sure that Brossoit and Hill are going to be able to carry and sustainably win games the same way. So that's one area of concern. You have to hope D stays healthy because that's been a bright spot for me lately. I've been very happy with that. But I'm really curious if in this next week here, what happens if they bring another player in? I don't know how that's going to affect it. They're going to have to find their stride, and you're going to have to do it in the middle of the busiest portion of the season, adding somebody in. I mean,
and the hardest. Yeah.
Dude, this trade, like if they add somebody on March 3rd, which of course there's a game that day, which is just so silly that the NHL does that.
Which is the most likely scenario, by the way. Of all things to happen, the most likely scenario is they add a player on March 3rd.
I believe that to be the case as well. I think March 2nd would be the very earliest anything would shake out. I think they're going to end up they're going to get rejected by prom dates is what I think. Know what I mean?
Yep.
I think they're going to have to go deeper in the pecking order than they're used to having to do when they've had pick of the litter, and for a variety of reasons, not just cap space, but even trade clauses and things. Who knows what people are wanting to do? But then you're going to chuck this player in the worst. This is the worst road trip I've ever seen in my life. I think if they could mix in, or this 2-week stretch of games, honestly, from the 5th to the 16th, if you could chuck in, let's say 2nd to 16th. If you could chuck a couple back-to-back, like another back-to-back in there, it would easily be the worst I've seen at the NHL level.
Yeah. It's brutal.
If they come out of that smelling like roses, Ken, I will be impressed beyond belief. I don't care how they get wins on that road trip. I don't care. I don't care how ugly it is, whether they're good, bad, anything. By that 3rd game in Carolina, they're going to be gassed. And then they got to grind back-to-back and go to Philly. There's bellwether. So, I mean, if you're looking at the strength of schedule here, there's no joke that they've got a tough road. But I don't think that they're – you ask me now, like I was worried about playoffs a month ago. Legit. Like I was actually worried that the way the team was trending and the confidence levels and Stone being out, I'm like, I don't know, especially how tight as the Pacific was. I've been very encouraged, at least since the break, in the way they play. I know they haven't all been great. I know that they've sleepwalked in a couple and had some periods. But you're just straight up running out of time to knock people out of playoffs. To me, they're going to make it.
There's only 9 teams trying.
Right. It's Calgary's the only team. Nashville's out. St. Louis is out.
Yes, there's only 9 teams trying to get into the playoffs.
Yeah. The only teams that are kind of like worried that Calgary, Minnesota are going to be your 2 that are coming at them. So I just don't know where they end up in seeding. Like if I'm Vegas, I want the best seed I can because I don't want to be a 2nd or 3rd seed. I think Vegas would have a real hard time against Seattle. And I think LA this year, I think LA would give them a hell of a run this year.
I think they could be a 4th seed.
It could.
In which case, then you play the division winner, which I will stand by. I think it's Edmonton. Or you're playing Dallas.
Wherever Edmonton ends up, that's not a team I'd want to go up against.
No. I wouldn't
They've
mind
gotten points in 9 of their last 10 games.
Yeah.
I think they can.
There's Colorado. Who knows what's going to happen there?
I don't trust Seattle's goaltending as much as I want to. I just don't.
But you do trust Vegas's.
I trust them to be adequate under Cassidy's system.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, I really believe that they can win, and I will be consistently on record in saying this, that I do believe Thompson especially is the one that has room to grow as a player, as a goalie. That he will end up being even better than we've seen, at least from a consistency level, from a body language level, from like basically just learning to be an NHL player, like day in, day out, make it easy to basically look like Connor Hellebuck, who just goes out there and crushes. And if he lets in 4, whatever, he gets off the ice, right? Like Ilya Sorokin, he's been on record as, yeah, life's too short. You can't worry about what happened. Like, there you go, man. No, he's Russian. I know that they're different. Like he's, I've had Russian teammates in the past have always just been very matter of fact or nonchalant about a lot of things. That's kind of the mentality sometimes, but it serves you really well as a goaltender. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing so many Russian goalies do so well, is because they do have a very steely approach to a lot of things. It's just kind of how that culture can be. So
the conference does not have great goaltending at the moment. Like you look at up and down the conference, it's not very good.
Got some adequate goaltending.
Yeah, there's some and I think that's kind of where the Golden Knights are. They have some adequate goaltending. I think any of them can be adequate in that particular day. I agree with you that Thompson is the highest upside. I just don't understand why there's a belief that he's going to hit that high upside every single game when he's been here for 80 games and doesn't hit it every single game. There are games that he does. There are also games that he doesn't. Brossoit was terrific in that game. Like they lose that game if they don't have a good goaltending performance, or at least they lose it in regulation. They get it to overtime. Okay. I think Brossoit was fine. I think Hill's been fairly fine. I'm not all that worried about playoffs. I definitely do worry about seeding because I look at kind of the different teams that are in the way, LA, Seattle, Edmonton, and I say, okay, yeah, you could fall to second, third. You could even fall to fourth if things don't go well. The thing I'm more worried about beyond anything is 25 games remain over the course of not that long. Like it's not even 2 months that 25 games remain in, which is you're talking 50 days or so in these 25 games. I'd have to look at the exact schedule. They're also against a lot of good teams. I'll pull that up again. It was 15 playoff teams, 25 games against 15 playoff teams.
Yeah.
I'm worried about them holding up. I'm worried about the team actually holding up. Like when they're fully healthy or close to fully healthy, which this is as close as they can be, basically missing just Mark Stone and of course Thompson as well. If there's one defenseman missing, if there's one more forward missing, that's where I start to worry. You're playing better teams with another forward missing. That's where it can dip completely off the rails here. And then if that happens, I still don't think they miss the playoffs, but you do feel differently heading down the stretch. And then they haven't reacted very well to struggling. Like, let's be completely honest here. When they're going well, they rip through a bunch of these games. I think that will continue tomorrow. I believe they're going to win tomorrow. I think they're better than Calgary right now. I think they might be better than Calgary overall as long as they're at the position they're in.
Yeah,
but when things go south, so I don't know. And by the way, Calgary is now losing in Arizona despite giving up 7 shots. Calgary has 1 goal on 29 shots. The Coyotes have 2 goals on 7. So that's not looking great. Let's bring Jason up. Jason loves him some trade deadline.
Love the deadline.
I hate the deadline. We'll talk about that later. But you kind of scour the insiders all the time. What do you think they're actually going to do? Like, don't. What do you want them to do? What's actually going to happen between now and March 3rd?
They will add something. I'm not quite sure it's going to be as big as what we're hearing, only because it seems like those players are off the board, right? So, who do they have left, right? Meyer, Kane. I mean, would they consider Besser? Probably not, right? Because
he's got term left at a lot of money. I don't see Besser fitting.
So Van Riemsdyk, again, these guys, other than Meyer, who would you really want to give up your future for? And I'm not even quite sure him, because he's going to test the waters anyways.
No matter who they get, if they get, that person has to improve the power play for it to be worth it for me. And that's kind of what it comes down to. And I'm not sure who they can pull that off with without
Torrey Krug,
making
I
a
don't think
really stupid decision. It's not going to be a D-man. They're set with that. They've got Dyson Mayo.
As long as they're healthy.
But no,
Mayo.
by the way, that's so rude, dude. Dyson Mayo's a good hockey player. It's just, I think he had a nice string of games and got rewarded with a contract that we all kind of went, oh man, good for him. I don't like JVR.
Way, Calgary just gave up another goal, by the way. Calgary's now down 3-1 on 8 shots.
I got to turn that on. I feel bad. That team hates their coach.
But what do you do about it?
I mean, by the way,
deep in the season.
Yeah. By the way, Theodore's been really good the last couple.
I
know he's had
he's had dance a little more. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, he had a couple. He was weak in front of the net on Nemestikov. But that's kind of what you get with the Shea sometimes. You're going to have some defensive lapses, but man, he has started to move those boots again, dude. And I like seeing that in motion down the ice in the zone.
It just opens things up. It changes the way they look in the offensive zone. It gives them another avenue that they just don't have when he's not doing it. And he hadn't been doing it for a while. Now he is again. It's a huge difference.
So it would be unnecessary to bring in a guy like Krug because of the way Theodore's playing and what he can potentially do in the playoffs. Yeah. I just think there's a lot of names out there. Ken and I talked off there that these names are just being linked because everybody knows that Vegas and other teams are going to do something eventually. And I don't know, I guess they're just taking stabs at, oh, this makes sense. Krug played with played under Cassidy. Oh, that makes sense. They've been going after Barbashev for a few years. That makes sense.
Who says Krug wants to play for Cassidy again, though? There's a lot of players that don't want to play for him again. Krug has a full choice. Yeah. He's got no trade clause. So that's the one thing about St. Louis, their decor. You've got Parayko, you've got Krug and Falk for sure with full no trades. And I think Parayko's either kicks in or has some as well. So I don't know. I just don't look around and see a lot of players that are really big difference makers for this team. If they're out there, Domi is the one.
Meyer, right?
I do like Domi though. I think he'd be he intrigues me. And even I'll put it this way. I'd rather have Domi than Athanasiou. Athanasiou would come in.
Yeah, for sure.
He'd just blow the doors off some people once or twice and look great. And then everybody would be like, nice. We paid that for him. Yeah. I just don't see what's going to improve this club out there right now, unless they swing for Kane. Cause I think Kane at least would Kane would help them on their power play.
Would it?
I think he would, because it'd be such a different look, and he's such a wizard with the puck. I do not think Eichel is a great passer. And that's what Kane can do so well. Yes, this is a stupid rhetorical question to say, did you watch? Because I know you did. Tampa Bay's power play is ridiculous. An absolute nightmare to defend. There are so many options. And I mean, you got the bumper play, you got the seam play, you got the one-timer, you got the net attack. You got it all. Mike,
if they buy Patrick Kane, they're going to put him on the other side of Eichel. Kane doesn't shoot. Eichel doesn't shoot. They're just going to dick with the puck and pass it to each other. You got to hope zipping passes through the seam and no one will shoot.
You got to hope that Kane will put it in a place that Eichel can shoot the puck.
He won't, though. He'll pick it up and dust it off. They need to speed up on the power play, not slow down. That's what Cade's going to do. I don't think he helps at all.
You're not going to trade for him to use the second unit either, right? You're going to have to put Kane on the top unit because,
of course,
that's one of the reasons why you bring him in.
Which is the top unit now?
The one that gets the more minutes, which is still the Eichel one, because they enter.
But notice
that's the difference.
Against Tampa. Tampa, they started off right away with Carrier and Stevenson, and
they did.
And I think it was
like a wake up. Yeah,
I think it was a bit of a carrot at the end of the stick, but
it was.
If Chandler Stevenson's one timer is your best option on the power play, it's not going anywhere. And Stevie shoots the puck well on and off the blade, but he's not Stamkos, right?
Well, and he's not great in that bumper spot getting those shots off. Like he's just doesn't seem terribly comfortable in there. It's not like he's bad. He's just not seemingly terribly comfortable in there.
Great hockey player, man.
There's nothing there. Like they don't have a great plan on the power play. And like we said it, everyone said their power play will improve because of Jack Eichel. And I looked at it the whole time and I said, entries, yeah, probably. And they're entering well. That's the crazy thing. They actually enter pretty well, and they still suck on the power play. He's not helping them, and he doesn't fit with Cassidy and how they want to play on the power play. He just doesn't.
No, not a bit. He does not. There's no doubt. It is worse with him out there, and that's just the way it's been.
I'd assume Van Riemsdyk would be on the first unit as well if they went and got him.
He would be net front.
He would take Wa's place right in front.
Yeah,
but JVR, so JVR, I mean, he's an old teammate of mine, and he's an amazing guy. But he's not a great skater. He's not very mobile. He doesn't have a great shot. He's very much he's a very cerebral player. He's a smart player. He's a net front player. I mean, do the Vegas Golden Knights need more smart players? Sure, every team does. I just don't think JVR accomplishes what the team. If Vegas gets somebody, that player has to play with some pace and be able to do the power play. In my eyes, I don't think it can be a player that slows them down. I don't think
it's Meyer. It has to be Meyer. I guess maybe Domi, but I still think it has to be Meyer. Domi and Kane are on the worst power play in the league.
Yes, they are. So
the reason why I like Domi though is he adds something that not many players on the team does. You know, especially in the playoffs, he'll be a pain in the ass to play against. He'll probably take some dirty, hits here and there, which I'm fine with in the playoffs. So
boy, was he mad at Keegan Kolesar? I don't know what he must have said something. Boy, was he mad. I was mad at Keegan Kolesar, and I didn't even know what happened because I was he's Domi. So mad. By the way, the Flames just tied the game.
Ooh. See, there you go. They're coming back. No problem.
They scored twice in a minute and 2 seconds.
But Domi will probably be an addition to somebody, right? So let's just say they go out and get Kane or JVR. Wouldn't Domi have to come in as well? I mean, they can't sit there and say, all right, that's a good enough deadline move for us to go ahead and win 3 or 4 rounds. I don't think they're that naive.
No, I don't think so. There's one name out there that I talked to somebody with today that his name hasn't been mentioned on the trade board at all. And it caught my guy off guard a little bit.
I'm intrigued.
But I just really like the player. And he's on Washington.
Connor Garland. Connor Garland.
No, Garland.
Go ahead. Is it Oshie?
I like Garland, but I'm afraid he's hurt. No, not Oshie, because Oshie's going to be hurt too. You have to factor that.
No, you don't have to factor that in. You ignore that and then get sad when it happens.
Okay, I really like Connor Sheary. Now, Garnett Hathaway is getting attention from that team in Washington, and I think Washington is probably going to do a mixture. I think they're going to sell and maybe make a hockey trade, if you have to ask me, because you still have Ovi for 3 more years after this.
I don't want Garnett Hathaway.
You can't give up on him.
They're not moving Wilson.
No,
I would take him.
I really like Sheary. He's 30 years old. He can play either side. His contract's $1.5 million.
Wow.
He plays power play. Like, he has points in the power play this year. He can play a lot of different scenarios. He skates well. He's not big, but that's a guy that I look at and I think he's not even making trade boards. Who's to say this guy wouldn't be a good addition for me? I think he could help. So, are there players you can find out there that don't necessarily make every trade board? Sure, they exist. But he's somebody I got my eye on. I really wonder if somebody doesn't pick him up, because I like that player a lot, man. He's fast. He's always involved. It seems like he can finish pretty well, at least, and do a lot of different roles. So that's just one name I think could be a third line solution. But
is Anthony Duclair too much of an injury risk to go and make a move?
I don't think so, because he ruptured an Achilles, and we saw what happened with Pacioretty, obviously. But Duclair
I just don't think he's a great fit. He's more off.
Duclair is kind of
around at the puck.
To me, he's kind of in the same boat as an Athanasiou.
Yeah. Yep.
Boy, he just blows you away. God, he's sexy. Man, he can skate. And then you want to
smash your head into the wall, yeah.
Oh, does he just look great every now and then? And he's the type of player who never reaches what you think it should be. Colton Parayko's the exact same way in St. Louis. I know he's won a Stanley Cup, and he's a good NHL defenseman. This year he's been lost, and it's always been the thought that Parayko would turn into Petro.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Big, strong.
Well. Just doesn't skate as well.
He can shoot a puck through 18 planes of glass, but he never does it. And he's been slowed down by a back injury lately. And he could skate pretty well for a while.
Not like Petro.
But he's not Petro. Petro's been so good, man. Petro's been so good. Like Petro against Tampa when he came back on.
The delay of game is pretty bad, but.
Well, that one was shit. Yeah, but I mean, I'm trying to think of when he was, Hagel's all alone in the slot, and Petro had already humped back from the neutral zone to try to get back on a rush, and then is able to still reattack onto Hagel into the slot and break that whole thing up. It was just like that. That's not just a strong player who can skate. It takes a lot of will and effort, and he brings it, man. I think a lot of that guy.
Will there be a bidding war for Barbashev? Because it seems like he's that next tier down, right? And all of a sudden, the teams that missed out on maybe players they wanted, or Meyer's price is too expensive. Doesn't he feel like there could be a bidding war and somebody might actually lose out there? Because he's a good player, right?
Barbashev's going to get a second rounder. There's even a thought process somebody might cough up a first for him, and I would
too much.
Geez,
let me ask this question:
for him.
With where the Golden Knights trade board is at currently, meaning their draft board moving forward, with where they're at with their prospects, which we can debate where they're at with their prospects. I think they have NHL players in the pool. I don't think they have impact NHL players in the pool. I think Paul Cotter might be, if you were to put him in the prospect pool, I think he might be the best one in the prospect pool. That kind of explains where I think they are. But I think they have other guys who can play. If they give up a first round pick and lose in the Stanley Cup final, is that a win
for this organization? Yes.
Okay, that you think if they give up a first round pick and lose in the Stanley Cup final, Mike saying no, Jason saying yes.
Yep. I misunderstood you there. I apologize. I did not. If they go to the first round final and lose if they go to the Stanley Cup final and lose in the final after giving up a first rounder, it's successful. If you get to the Stanley Cup final,
all right. So you give up a first round pick. You lose in the Western Conference final. Is it successful?
In the eyes of this organization, absolutely. I'm not saying to me.
Okay, that's fine.
I will. If they can't get past the second round, to me, it's absolutely not successful in any way.
Right, that's a Western Conference final. Yeah,
I know that's kind of my tipping point. I don't think going to the Western Conference final is successful for this team after where they've been. And how much they've spent.
So a first, and again, and like Chris makes a good point. If you go to the Stanley Cup final, it's pick 31. If you go to Western Conference final, it's pick 29. All right, I get that. However, Brossoit was pretty late in the draft.
It's a deep draft,
pretty late in the draft. Like, it's a deep draft. You can get a good player at that. And I think the bigger part is like they don't have any of those real impact players. So you kind of need one in the system, and you need that player to either be for you or help you get somebody else down the road.
Yeah.
If it's a third round pick and you lose in the first round, I think it's a failed move. You win a round, maybe we feel a little bit better. Like, I just feel like the like cost versus benefit, they pretty much have to go to the Stanley Cup final if they do anything but hold.
They're not the Toronto Maple Leafs. Kyle Dubas had a chance to get.
They are.
Kyle Dubas had a chance.
In what way?
Because the Maple Leafs are better than the Golden Knights.
I would agree, but the Golden Knights are also in a situation like the Maple Leafs where they have all their money tied up in 4 players.
But the Maple Leafs still had draft capital to spend, and they spent it. And I don't disagree with it. I gave that trade on O'Reilly. I gave the Leafs a C+ on it. And I had people coming at me on Twitter for giving them a terrible grade. Guys, what's a C+ in school?
It's
a
slightly 79?
above average.
It's above passing by a long shot. Okay.
It's not by a long shot. It's just barely above passing.
No,
there's
a D is above passing.
B-. No, a D is not above passing.
It is. F is passing. Yes, a D is above passing.
Yes. I sometimes have a recurring dream that I forgot to finish one class.
No, it's definitely not anything to be proud of. But this is what I'm trying to say. I gave that grade a C+ because I would have made that trade too. I thought it was a risky trade. I applaud Kyle Dubas for making that trade because he's given his team a chance. But he's leveraged the farm here. This is
he's fired if they don't do something here.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I guess realistically speaking for Vegas this year, if they give up one of those 2 third-round picks for somebody, have at it. Okay.
The only reason I can't fully go there is because they're missing the 2nd and they're missing the 6th or 5th. So now you're like down to 4 picks if they give up one of them in what's considered a deep draft. That's the only reason. I'm with you. I think I'd rather give up a 2nd next year than a 3rd this year.
Oh, if that's your option,
but is St. Louis going to take a 2nd for Barbashev when they know that they can probably get this year?
A 2nd down the road. They don't have a 2nd from this year. The Golden Knights don't have a 2nd this year.
Oh,
I'm just curious to see.
So St. Louis would rather
curious
to see what?
I'm curious to see if a big dog will trade with Vegas.
Why would
that would be San Jose?
No. When's the last time a big dog traded with Vegas?
What do you mean by a big dog?
Doug Armstrong is one of the most powerful GMs in hockey. He's cutthroat. He'll do whatever it takes.
Rutherford
team
with the Reeves deal.
But that Vancouver sucks. That's the thing.
No, sorry. I was talking about
Pittsburgh at the time. It was Pittsburgh.
But I mean now, under this current regime, what teams in the top half of the league have made a trade with the Vegas Golden Knights? Am I forgetting anybody here? What am I forgetting?
Carolina took Pacioretty off their hands for nothing.
Yeah, they paid him to go away. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Montreal
was at the bottom of the barrel when they did
Winnipeg took Stastny and Schmidt.
And was that a McPhee deal?
They're all the same. Why do we do this?
But just
no, that was technically McCrimmon. At that point,
I'm trying to think anyone else that they've. I mean, you're like the trades the Golden Knights have done well on have been Ottawa. They did well on the Stevenson one, Washington.
So Washington, that was one.
I think they did well in the New Jersey trade with Gusev.
That was a while ago. I'm just looking for recent memories here, man. Like,
the trades.
I just want
Buffalo.
I want to see if their reputation prevents anything. Like, that's kind of what it comes down to. Does anybody want to play ball with Vegas? Who wants to play ball with Vegas?
Will a new GM like? All right, let me ask this question. If the deal is, say the deal for Timo Meier is 2 first-round picks and your best prospect. So for Vegas, that would be the next 2 first-round picks they have, and their best prospect is probably Brossoit. You can make an argument it's Dean. Maybe it's Korzak, whatever.
Yep.
You have to imagine that any other team that steps up with 2 first-round picks and their best prospect is probably considered better than the Golden Knights, because I think that prospect's better than Brossoit. However, let's say it's equal. Call it completely equal. 2 first-round picks, your best prospect. What do you think that San Jose would not take that deal because it's Vegas?
I don't think it would matter. But San Jose is also a bottom. Either. But San Jose is a bottom feeder in rebuild. That's my point.
Yeah, but Timo Meier, do they really want to send in division, potentially knowing that he could re-sign possibly with Vegas? That hurts them down the line even more.
It doesn't. I don't buy into the in division stuff as much as a lot of folks.
I don't either.
I think
if you have a chance to make your team better, you do it. And it's a new regime, man. It's Mike Grier. Mike Grier is going to make a stamp on making that team better.
Yep.
So
I completely agree. I think it doesn't matter. I think my only question is, I don't know that they can make up a package good enough to actually get him. So that's where it's going to cost.
New Jersey could sneeze out a better option right now.
Oh yeah.
New Jersey may end up doing that. We'll have to see. All right, let's make some picks. Let's make some picks, because it's going to be an interesting week. We've got some difficult games coming up. Calgary tied heading into the 3rd period. Hopefully they play all night and give the Golden Knights a break. Calgary tomorrow. It's a 6:00 game for those of you going. 6:00 game. It's not at 7. By the way, I have a funny story to tell. It was hilarious. Now we're in the locker room, and the one of the social media people that deals with social media, she wanted to get somebody to kind of go on record to remind everyone that the game was at 7:30, not 7 on the last game. So I'm assuming she thought it would be funny to have a Matteo do it, because there's not a lot of personality there. So She goes up to Amadio and explains to him what she wants to do. And he's like, so what, I just say 7:30? Yeah. And Nick was like, well, you could say more. Like you say, like, don't miss it or don't be late or something like that. And Amadio's like, oh, okay. She says, Ammo, what time's the game tomorrow? And he looks at the camera as deadpan as me. It goes 7:30 and says nothing else. And she turns it off. And I just screamed in the locker room, nailed it.
Some people aren't built for media. That's
It was
hilarious. So okay, so
sorry.
I'm going to close the show out after I make let's make our picks. I'll close the show out with these two.
Okay.
I got a couple stories that I can't forget now because of that. So
do we know if we're doing goalie interference on Tuesday or Wednesday or Tuesday or Thursday next week? They play Calgary or they play Carolina at home on Wednesday. I'm going to let you guys pick right now if you want to.
Mike, all you.
Text.
Let's see.
I prefer Thursday if possible.
Let me look at the old schedule here for everybody.
We got Spring Valley Yankees on Tuesday, Ken.
Oh,
yeah, I'm good on Thursday. I'm good for Thursday.
All right, so Thursday it is. All right, so we're picking 4 games. Calgary at home, Dallas at home, Colorado away, Carolina at home. Go ahead.
Okay.
Calgary at home.
You want me to go?
I think they beat Calgary at home.
I agree. That's a W. Are we all on the same page? That's a win.
Calgary. It's a win. They lose to Dallas.
I like Calgary tomorrow, especially if they lose tonight. If they lose tonight, there's a good chance Suter's fired and they're playing a motivated hockey tomorrow.
Here we go. I'm going to say they beat Calgary. They lose to Dallas. They beat Colorado in extra innings. I'm going to say
it's called overtime in this sport.
Is there a man on second base?
I'm going to say 4-3 in extra innings somehow.
And the shot clock.
And then I think that they lose 5-1 to Carolina.
Oh, they're going to get smashed by Carolina?
That's my guess. So I have them getting 4 of 8 points here.
4 because they said they win in overtime, yeah.
All right, so I have them losing to Calgary, beating Dallas, surprisingly.
That's 2.
Beating Colorado.
That's 4.
And then losing to Carolina. No overtime games, straight up regulation wins and losses.
All right.
Nice.
They're going to beat Calgary. They're going to lose to Dallas. They're going to lose to Colorado. They're going to lose to Carolina.
Ooh. It's a tough week.
My goodness.
I think that we're headed for a period of them being back to a point per game for a little while here. And I just think that that's what this team is. They're better than the not good teams. They're not as good as the good teams. And I think that getting through these at a point per game after the last couple of games is going to come back down to earth. I think they're a little bit better than a point per game team with the current roster that they have, and especially with the ups and downs of the season. It feels better because they won 5 games out of 6 here, and they got that extra point. And before the break, I think some of that was hard luck. But I do think they're going to go back into a little bit of a scoring slump. Power play is going to score at some point, but it's not going to be particularly good. But yeah, I think it's going to be awfully, awfully difficult. Like, I think it's going to be very difficult to beat these teams consistently. And the biggest part of it, the biggest reason why I think they're going to struggle in the near future is they have not trailed since the break. They've basically not trailed at all. They're going to trail in some of these games. And I think that's going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we do not have any word on Hill. They did not practice today, so we don't have word on Hill. We expect to have word on Hill first thing tomorrow. If Hill does not practice tomorrow, we got huge problems.
Am I crazy to think Cam Talbot is out there and they might be calling about him?
Not if you read Lawless's piece about having 4 NHL goalies.
4?
Yeah, Michael Hutchinson too. So, which is truth. I mean, he's got a lot of NHL games. So, I don't know. I'd be surprised if they did.
No, I'm going to do it. I'm sorry, Dyson. I'm sorry. Dyson Mayo has NHL games too. I'm sorry, Dyson.
I got a handful, but
newest Silver Knight.
Mike, were you ever rumored in trades that you had to answer question for 3 weeks?
Oh, Jesus. No, I wasn't in the NHL long enough. I was never trade bait for anybody. Even though I did get traded, I was far from a hot commodity. Teams couldn't wait to get rid of me.
But even in the AHL, did you ever have, you heard something, you might've been packaged up or something?
You don't have rumors like that in the A. It's whatever the
No.
team up top needs to do. So, oh shoot, I knew I should have written it down. I already forgot. I had two stories. One of them.
Oh shit, my bad. I hope I didn't cut you off there.
One of them I can't remember. The second one, somebody asked about rookie pranks, and that one actually isn't from myself. Oh, I remembered it. Okay, so this directly stems from Amadio. So I played with a guy in college. I'll leave his name out, but he was from Fergus Falls, Minnesota, way up on the range, kind of by North Dakota. And he went to
Ken's Googling Fergus, Minnesota.
Fergus Falls, Minnesota. But he went to dinner at this girl's house or something, and the parents there asked him if he wanted to say grace. And that made him real nervous. He didn't really know what to do. I guess he hadn't experienced that very often. And you know, like I've been to some families, I mean, that's, you say grace, like they're looking for somebody to say a prayer before dinner, right? Because I guess everybody assumes everybody's Christian. And they asked him to say grace, and he looked around and he just went, grace.
Grace. Fantastic.
So that's then they ate dinner. So he accomplished that feat.
I mean, that does
and then the other one I remember somebody asked about rookie pranks in the chat. And yeah, we used to have good rookie pranks, and you can still do some fun rookie pranks. You know, you can put some clear tape on the bottom of somebody's skate, or you can write their name on a piece of tape on their forehead, and they won't notice it, and they'll go out on the ice, which just drives me crazy. It's like a little kid at a camp. You know, it's so funny. But the funniest one I remember didn't involve me. It involved the St. Louis Blues when I was a kid, and they would always host a skills competition. And they would go through the full skills comp like the All-Star game. So they do puck control relay, they do hardest shot, they do accuracy, shooting, all these things. And my dad and grandpa were off ice officials. My dad is still off an ice official. My grandpa's dead. Tomorrow actually would have been his 102nd birthday. So I get to go see Grandpa Billy. Today was my youngest daughter's birthday. Yesterday was my dad's birthday. So we line them up right in a row in February. It's awesome.
Big month.
Big month. But in any case, I'm down in the penalty box because they're doing the score sheet for this event. And it's super relaxed, right? The glass is down on the sides and all that. So I'm in there with them. And Brett Hull skates by us. And he kind of puts his hand over his glove and he goes, "We got the rookie." And it was in hardest shot competition. And this Czech guy named Roman Vopat comes out. And I think his brother Jan Vopat's a scout. Might even be for Vegas. I can't remember who he's with. But so Roman Vopat comes out, big hulking Czech, you know, like from when this used to be Czechoslovakia, you know what I mean? So this guy was West Germany team, you know what I mean? And he's got these Bauer 30-30 sticks. They're black. And he goes out to do hardest shot. And I'm telling you, this guy wound up absolutely for the fences, right?
Oh, boy.
And his blade breaks in half and windmilled about 30 rows up in the stands.
Oh, did they cut it?
Yes. So Hull or whoever else, they untaped it. They cut a slit into the blade so that it would break, and they taped it up perfectly and looked just the same way. And he did. And they must have done all of his sticks, right? So there was every chance in the world this was going to happen. And that blade flew so far, guys. And Hull and the other guys are just roaring, laughing. My grandpa's dying. That was really funny. And
how'd he take it? How'd the rookie
he was good. You know, he didn't pay for the sticks or anything. Like, it was just, but he was confused. He's like, "What the hell happened to my stick?" I'm sure. And then when you look at it, you can see that there's, like, when sticks used to break back then, they were made of wood and fiberglass. The breaks weren't clean. They were really nasty, splinters everywhere. And this thing was, I mean, it looked like you took a circular saw through it, you know?
They might have.
Yeah. So I think they just took the hacksaw enough, you know, half of the way through the blade. But God, that was funny, man. That was one of the best rookie pranks I ever saw.
Mike, is the name in the column the correct teammate?
In the
comments. The comments.
I don't have any teammates in there.
Okay.
I didn't ever played with Matt Cullen, if that's who.
Oh yeah, that's who we were looking for.
It was a teammate of mine at St. Lawrence University. Put it that way. He was a college guy.
The Fergus Falls junior team is called the Otters, by the way. I'm assuming there's a lot of otters in Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
Yeah, so my goalie partner was also from Fergus Falls in college. These two came as a tandem, and this guy was so competitive. He was really good at golf too, and he won like second place in some tournament. He goes and gets his trophy, and he takes the trophy, just throws it right in the trash.
Not a second place guy. I like those guys.
He just
threw second place. You know who doesn't like second place? I'll tell you who doesn't like second place. That's the Jimerson Law Firm. The Jimerson Law Firm is here for winning. If you want to win, seek out the Jimerson Law Firm. No second place there. Second place in a lawsuit's bad, like real bad, like way worse than second place in a golf tournament. Seek out the Jimerson Law Firm. Thanks, as always, to the Jimerson Law Firm for sponsoring Goalie Interference. We'll be back Thursday, apparently, according to Mike's plans. Thursday, we'll be back after 4 games. I'll be doing some Twitter Spaces and Periscopes and whatnot in between now and then. Maybe we'll knock out a podcast. I don't know. That is it. Anyone have closing remarks?
Mike, did you see the little joke about McKenna family in May?
No, I don't get it.
I'm guessing, 9-10 months,
He's saying 9 months from May is February.
A few weeks leading up into the 9 months,
Somebody's digging deep into my personal
I feel like I feel like one of the birthdays was like your father, so I don't know that lines up necessarily, but maybe not sure what's
family tree of 100.
That's kind of like it's kind of like an Ace Ventura when Dan Marino looks at Ace and he goes, "Hey Ace, got any more of that gum?" And Ace looks right back at him and he goes, "That's none of your damn business, Dan, and I'd appreciate it if you'd stay out of my personal affairs."
Well, that's the end of the show.
Yeah.
Great.